The airport was loud with announcements, rolling suitcases, and tired travelers rushing toward their gates, but one quiet moment on a crowded airplane changed 2 lives forever. A billionaire CEO, admired by thousands and feared by her employees, sat frozen in an economy seat after a last-minute flight change. She had spent years building an empire worth billions, yet that afternoon she couldn't win the battle against exhaustion. Her hands trembled, her eyes burned from weeks without proper sleep, and the weight of endless responsibility had finally become too heavy. Then, without expecting anything in return, a young single father sitting beside her gently leaned closer and silently offered the only thing he truly had to give. His shoulder. That simple act of kindness would uncover hidden wounds, forgotten dreams, and a truth that neither of them was prepared to face. Before we continue this unforgettable journey, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who still believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. Every like and subscription helps us bring more emotional stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. Aurelia Mercer was known across the business world as the unstoppable CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing technology companies. Magazine covers celebrated her brilliance, investors admired her confidence, and competitors feared her determination. Yet behind every polished interview and confident smile lived a woman who hadn't enjoyed a peaceful night's sleep in nearly 3 years. Success had become a prison built from endless meetings, impossible expectations, and the haunting fear that slowing down for even a single day would cause everything she had built to collapse. When a mechanical problem forced the airline to downgrade several first-class passengers to economy, Aurelia accepted the inconvenience without complaint. She was too tired to argue. She simply wanted to close her eyes, even if only for a few minutes. Beside her sat Rowan Hale, a 34-year-old single father traveling with his 7-year-old daughter, Mira. Their clothes were clean but simple, their carry-on bags worn with age, and their tickets had been purchased after months of careful saving. Rowan worked as a public school librarian in a small town, balancing 2 jobs after losing his wife to a sudden illness 4 years earlier. Every day he fought loneliness without allowing his daughter to notice. His greatest achievement was not surviving grief but making sure Mira continued believing that life was still beautiful. The trip they were taking was a promise fulfilled. He had promised his daughter they would finally visit the ocean after years of postponing dreams because every dollar had been needed elsewhere. As the plane climbed into the bright afternoon sky, Mira quietly fell asleep against her father's other shoulder while Rowan noticed the woman beside him struggling to remain awake. Her breathing became uneven, her head repeatedly jerked forward before she forced herself awake again. There was something painfully familiar about the exhaustion on her face. It reminded him of the long nights he had spent beside hospital beds, pretending to stay strong while his entire world quietly fell apart. Without asking who she was or what she owned, Rowan simply adjusted his posture and softly told her that his shoulder was hers if she needed to rest. There was no judgment, no curiosity, and no expectation. Only kindness. At first Aurelia politely refused. Years of leading corporations had taught her never to appear vulnerable. Weakness invited questions, and questions invited attention she desperately wished to avoid. Yet after another 20 minutes of fighting sleep, her body surrendered where her pride would not. She cautiously rested her head against the stranger's shoulder, expecting embarrassment. Instead she found peace unlike anything she had experienced in years. The constant pressure inside her chest slowly eased. The roaring thoughts that usually filled her mind became strangely quiet. For the first time in countless nights, she slept deeply. Several passengers noticed the unusual scene. Some smiled warmly while others secretly photographed the elegant businesswoman peacefully sleeping beside an ordinary father holding his sleeping daughter. Rowan ignored every curious glance. His only concern was making sure neither sleeper was disturbed. For nearly 2 hours he remained perfectly still, his shoulder growing numb, refusing to move because both exhausted souls finally looked at peace. When the aircraft landed beneath the bright afternoon sun, Aurelia opened her eyes slowly, confused for a brief moment before realizing where she had been sleeping. Instead of feeling embarrassed, she felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Safety. She thanked Rowan sincerely, expecting him to ask for a favor or recognize her from television interviews. He simply smiled, wished her well, and focused on helping Mira collect her backpack. Before disappearing into the crowd, the little girl waved goodbye with innocent joy, leaving Aurelia standing motionless in the terminal. Back at corporate headquarters the following week, Aurelia discovered that the peaceful flight had become unexpectedly unforgettable. During an executive meeting filled with financial reports and expansion plans, she caught herself thinking not about profits but about the stranger whose greatest wealth had been compassion. She realized something deeply uncomfortable. She could remember quarterly revenue from 5 years earlier, yet she couldn't remember the last genuine conversation she had enjoyed without discussing business. Her life had become efficient but emotionally empty. Meanwhile, Rowan returned home to his ordinary routines. Mornings began before sunrise, lunches were packed with care, library shelves were organized, and bedtime stories filled every evening. He never imagined the woman from the airplane would cross his path again. To him she was simply another tired traveler who needed a place to rest. He never searched her name online because he had never asked it. Kindness, in his eyes, required no introductions. Fate quietly arranged otherwise. Aurelia launched a nationwide literacy initiative designed to support struggling schools. During one surprise visit to a small-town library, cameras followed her through the building as journalists documented the event. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. Behind a shelf of children's books stood Rowan, laughing with a group of excited students while helping them choose their next adventure. He looked exactly the same as he had on the airplane, except now his smile seemed even brighter surrounded by children. Instead of immediately revealing that they had already met, Aurelia spent the afternoon observing. She watched Rowan kneel beside nervous readers, encourage shy children, repair damaged books with remarkable patience, and celebrate every small success as though it were a championship victory. There was no audience he was trying to impress. This was simply who he was every day. She realized that while she had spent years building billion-dollar software systems, this ordinary father quietly built confidence inside children who had almost stopped believing in themselves. The company later discovered that Rowan had independently organized weekend reading programs, purchased books with his own limited salary, and even transformed unused storage rooms into colorful reading corners for children whose families couldn't afford private tutoring. He had never requested recognition. His greatest reward was watching reluctant readers slowly fall in love with stories. Aurelia invited Rowan to company headquarters, not to offer charity but to seek advice. She admitted that despite enormous success, she had forgotten how to measure a meaningful life. Rowan never pretended to possess extraordinary wisdom. He simply explained that every difficult season becomes easier when someone chooses kindness before convenience. Losing his wife had taught him that careers could wait, promotions could return, but moments of compassion often arrived only once. He had offered his shoulder because someone else had once done the same for him during the darkest chapter of his own life. Those words remained with Aurelia for months. Gradually the culture inside her corporation began changing. Employee wellness programs expanded. Parents received greater flexibility with family schedules. Scholarships were created for children from struggling communities. Thousands of books were donated to schools across the country, with Rowan helping design literacy projects that reached neighborhoods long forgotten by major charities. Investors questioned the increased spending at first, but employee satisfaction, innovation, and loyalty soon reached record levels. Compassion, Aurelia learned, was not expensive. Indifference was. Mira watched these changes with innocent happiness. She never fully understood board meetings or corporate strategies. She simply knew that the nice lady from the airplane often visited their library carrying boxes of new books and somehow laughed much more than before. The tired eyes she remembered were slowly replaced with peaceful ones. Years later, During the opening ceremony of the largest children's learning center funded by Aurelia's Foundation, she stood before hundreds of families and admitted something that surprised every reporter present. She confessed that the greatest lesson of her career had not come from business school, investment banks, or international conferences. It had come from an economy seat on an ordinary afternoon when a single father with very little reminded a wealthy stranger that kindness asks for nothing except the courage to care. If this story has touched your heart so far, please pause for a second and leave a like, share this video with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that inspire kindness, healing, and second chances around the world.